Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For Checking TV. I'm your host, Doug Gladkey, and alongside me today is my co-host, Scotty Porterfield. Scotty, how are we doing, buddy?
We're here, man. It's the NHL season has come to an end, and now we're into that hectic time of the year that we like to call the off season, and a lot of moves are being made, and a lot of moving parts going around, especially in the last 24 hours, league wide. And we're gonna obviously look into some of those today. But the main thing we want to focus on, of course, is the Penguins doing their best to keep the core together, not and not lose anyone in the process of free agency. They've done a pretty good job of it so far.
Yes, you know, first off, right off the bat, you got Brian Rust taking a contract where he makes $5.125 million against the cap. That's probably about, I'm going to say roughly a $2 million pay cut compared to what he could have got out on the open market. And, that is huge for the Penguins. It's a 6-year extension where he's making $5.125 million against the cap. First 3 seasons have a full no movement clause. And then the rest of the way, there's no clauses attached to it at all, which is a pretty good indicator of, okay, they think that they got another 3 years left in the tank with this, at least with Sid and Letang. And again, the entire Sidney Crosby narrative of everybody takes a little less to keep the gang together. It's never been, I in my opinion, it's never rang truer than it does right now. Because you got Casey DeSmith taking a 2-year deal at 1.8 million. Whereas you got to think, everybody was like, oh, they should bring Fleury back. Well, same day, Fleury signed an extension where he's making $3.5 million against the cap for 2 years, which would have been the same going rate that Tristan Jarry is getting paid. And, that $1.8 million discount between the two, you might not think of it now, but when the time comes and whenever the core is all hopefully back together, you're gonna be like, all right, Casey DeSmith's my dude for being able to take that little of a contract whenever the goaltending market is so like out to lunch right now around the league that he could have easily gotten paid a hefty dollar. And last but not least, in terms of extensions, this is where I get to have my fun. Chris Letang, 6-year extension, $6.1 million cap hit. You can tell that Ron Hextall really spread this contract out longer to make the cap hit less. And honestly, just want to say that is a good deal to do with your aging stars. Not a good deal to do when you're trying to get Brandon Tanev's cap hit lower, or somebody of that nature or of that caliber or ballpark. Full no movement clause for Letang for the first 4 years of the contract. And then right before the 2026-2027 season, the modified no trade kicks in. But if we were to bargain to guess, Chris Letang probably isn't even playing hockey in 2027. Because here's the thing, you get these older guys on the long-term deals. They play till they can't do it anymore, and they just ride off into LTIR Island. But everybody, a lot of people hating on this contract, but why? Why are you hating on this contract? Because here's the thing, and you can stop me if you want, but let's be real. The only way they could replace Chris Letang's production would be if they had Cale Makar, Adam Fox, or Victor Hedman.
Yeah.
Neither of those guys grow on trees, and neither of those guys are you getting for $6.25 or $6.1 million, let alone Letang's old $7.25 million cap hit.
Yeah, in terms of the cap hit, it's huge. I mean, again, you see how you kind of see, you call it Sid's influence. I like to think of it as Mario's influence in a sense too, because they want to keep this group together. And Obviously, Russ bought in. He's willing to take less in order to stay in Pittsburgh. Same with Letang. Obviously, the jury's still out on Gino. And to answer your question on why people hate the contract, Dougie, we already know the answer to that. It's because of the term. Okay, the idea of paying a guy $6 million until he gets into his 40s is frightening to most fans. And I won't lie, when I first saw the contract, I saw 6 years, I thought, oh geez, here we go. I was a little skeptical of it at first because, again, it's like we've talked about in years past, and I'll bring it up again. Mario's all about the legacies. I think deep down, he's, I know Mario's not the owner anymore, but you can tell the influence is still there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's still there. And I think, whenever he had to trade away Jaromir Jagr all those years ago, you can kind of see that bugged him, that bugged him that he couldn't keep that core group together. And I think it's the same. I think that's what he's trying to prevent here in Pittsburgh. He wants these guys to retire in black and gold. He wants them to spend 2 decades plus in the city of Pittsburgh. That's what he wants. And I think that's what they want too now because they've spent so much time together. So in that sense, I think that, like I said, it's a good contract in the sense of term. It's not going to kill the Penguins by any means. Maybe in year 4 or 5, you start to, start to cringe a little bit about it. But at the end of the day, they're doing everything they can to keep this group together because they obviously think that they can still win with them. So we'll see how it ends up working out for them.
Yeah. And I mean, either, if you're hating the contract, it's either you didn't like the term or you're just some weirdo who's got Twitter fingers from his basement chronicling everything on a day-to-day basis. But furthermore, the thing is with Sid and Gino and Letang is they're all best friends. They don't want to go away from each other. And I think, I don't know if you saw Chris Letang's press conference from the draft, but like he basically reiterated 4 or 5 different times that like it wasn't like if, it's like once we get Gino back. Like once we get Gino extended, once Ron makes the contract work, and like,
he's optimistic that they're going to get back together. Very optimistic.
You have to be. I mean, we have 5 days to make this work. I really think they can make this work. It's just a matter of, you clear and, there's talks of them trying to clear out some cap space. There's reports out there that the Penguins are listening to offers on John Marino, Marcus Pettersson, Brian Dumoulin, and Jason Zucker, which is perfect because the whole idea is if you want these guys taken a little less, you still need cap money to be there after the fact to sign the filler pieces. Because the biggest reason they have not been as successful since 2017 is not the core itself, it's the filler pieces and the money that the filler pieces are commanding. Like you had set almost $7.5 million tied up in Jack Johnson and Eric Branson. Right now you have 3 of every single player on your defense core except Chad Ruhwedel is making over $4 million. That's not okay. That's not good for business, especially when you have 2 guys that are making like $750 and some change in P.O. Joseph and Mark Friedman that can play at those rates and yield similar results, potentially even better playing with Chad Ruhwedel with how good he's been last season as the number 6 defenseman for the first time in his full time for the first time in his NHL career. And, the whole thing is like, I feel like, locker room cleanout day, Ricard Raquel reiterated how much he wants to stay in Pittsburgh and how much he liked the fact that Mike Sullivan's system allowed him to really like have a coming out party as a player. I think Ricard Raquel makes Jason Zucker expendable because Raquel can play left wing. I think in an ideal world, it's Ricard Raquel, Evgeny Malkin, and somebody that you sign in free agency or get via trade. Because $5.5 million is a lot of money. Same goes with moving out one of the defensemen. You have to move out a defenseman. It probably makes the most sense to move out Marcus Pettersson because you get out of that contract and you get out of that term. I know a lot of people are going to shout into the void and say they want rid of Brian Dumoulin, but here's the thing. Brian Dumoulin has that pedigree. I would much rather bet on Brian Dumoulin for 1 year and let him walk in free agency next year if it doesn't work out than be committed to Marcus Pettersson for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I mean that's been one of the things that we've obviously discussed, and I think, and I was hoping that we were going to see some deals today in terms of just moving players out, and we didn't see any of them. So now I got to wonder what does Hextall and Burke have in there they can pull off now? Because like you said, Marcus Pettersson is expendable now. We've seen in the postseason, we saw just in this postseason how great of how electric of a player Mark Friedman can be. He's proven that he's able to play on that bottom pairing with Chad Ruedel, and you got POJ, who's pretty much been buried in Wilkes-Barre for the last year and a half now. You know, you have these guys that are capable of playing on the defensive role for cheap. And I think they can do just as well of a job, if not better, than Marcus Pettersson is doing. So if you can move that guy out and get your lines back to where they need to be, you need to have Dumoulin, Letang again. You need to get Matheson and Marino back together. That's the way it should be. And I think that's the only way it's going to happen is if you move out Pettersson. And going back on Zucker, again, like you said, Dougie, $5.5 million is not a bad price to pay, but you don't pay that to your third line left wing. You just don't. And again, I think there are teams that are looking to add. Seattle was a name that I saw that's looking to add this offseason. Again, I was hoping a deal was going to come together today. Didn't happen, so now we'll have to see what else they're able to do. The reason why I wanted these trades to come together today, and the Penguins like maybe swap a draft pick for Pettersson or a draft pick or two for Zucker, is I know that the mentality is to win now and whatnot, but when it comes to replenishing the farm, you have nothing to lose. The Penguins farm system is a joke, essentially. Outside of POJ and maybe Alex Nylander, who the Penguins really have that's going to do big numbers for them? Those are them, and the other guy's Puustinen. He's the
Drew
only
O'Connor.
He was
Puustinen.
Yeah, well, I mean, O'Connor was more of a regular. Kind of a regular this year.
True.
Got hurt. So I mean, you can make that argument, I guess. You could say the same thing about Radim Zohorna too.
Yes.
So I mean, but again, we're splitting hairs at this point. There's still only a couple guys where you're like, okay, they can help us right now. At some point you do need to start to make Wilkes-Barre better and have something optimistic to look forward to towards the future. So best way to do that is get draft picks and select players that you think can help you out. So, I mean, that's just my thought process on that.
I mean, we're talking about a farm system where they literally drafted Owen Pickering last night, and he's by default the best player in the farm system. Because we're still waiting on Sam Poulin. We're still waiting on Nathan Legare to magically become good. You reacquire Philip Hollander, making it sound like, oh, they're gonna give him a shot as a depth center or a third line center. Never happened. And that's the thing, that's why part of me was annoyed that they took the goalie with the draft pick today, but it is what it is. I think, I do think that they need to start taking the draft more seriously over the next couple years, but Owen Pickering's a really good pick. It's just hopefully for his sake, they allow him to just do what he does best and use his speed to his advantage. Because the last thing I want is for them to groom him into big, strong man Owen Pickering, where he's not necessarily immobile, but gets caught out of position, trying to throw big hits and stuff like that. Let him be a more offensive, for a lack of a comparison, let him be a more offensive Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, that one, or I saw Dumoulin was another comparison. He's Brian Dumoulin with an offensive upside.
Yeah, and I'm more than okay with that. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's going to be a bit of a project, probably going to take like 3 to 4 years to get here, but at the same time, like, going to be very helpful whenever the time does come. Now with the Penguins, with all this, with this potential newfound cap space that might be coming our way, what are you looking at? Like, what do you want? Because obviously we're getting to a point now where they're going to be able to probably add to the core and make them and give them a better supporting cast than what they've had in years prior, and allow them to contend for Stanley Cups a lot better than they have been over the past half decade.
So, like you said, obviously, you know, the guys you want to bring back the guys like Raquel and Malkin. Another guy that he's an RFA still, but I still think they need to put an emphasis on him is Danton Heinen. You know,
Yes.
I was being ignorant in our last episode. We totally need a guy like Danton Heinen back in our lineup. The way he played in the postseason this year was, you know, he had a bit of a clutch factor to his game during that time, and I think we definitely need to bring that guy back. Maybe as more of a third line option instead of a second. I feel like they were trying to force him into that role with Gino, and it just didn't really work out that well. So maybe you put him on that third line. Maybe you play him with Teddy Bluger or something and see how it goes. But I think that's really all you need to see. Another name that that has been thrown around Twitter, and rightfully so, I think, is another lost boy out in Edmonton, Jesse Puljujarvi. I think that's someone that people have paid a lot of attention to. He's kind of in the same boat as a Kasperi Kapanen in the sense that he kind of had a down year this year. He's not sure if this is how things are going to work. You know, if Edmonton's a place for things to work out there. So maybe they'll weigh the options, and I think that should be an option the Penguins should consider, because sometimes all you need is a fresh start somewhere, and why not Pittsburgh? They definitely had interest in Puljujarvi whenever he first was defecting over from Finland. They were looking to bring him in. Obviously, it didn't end up working out, but I'd still like to see if things could happen here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and you know that I am lobbying hardcore for this Puljujarvi thing, especially after what we saw Valeri Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen do in the playoffs for Colorado. I really think that there's a lot of comparables to Val Nichushkin's game and Jesse Puljujarvi, all the way down to the fact that his own GM is incapable of realizing what he has in him as a player and an asset, so much to the point that whoever gets him is going to literally steal him from Ken Holland's hands. I think, I mean, it's set this, they said that they were looking for a player of similar caliber. And like, honestly, like, I think Kasperi Kapanen for him 1-for-1 makes a lot of sense. And, you know, if you want to make it even better, they need a left-handed defenseman now since Duncan Keith retired today. You know, sure, they could sign Brett Kulak, but do you want Brett Kulak playing second pairing minutes? I feel like Marcus Pettersson could easily be a match there. They're going to have a lot of cap space. They're going to have almost $20 million in cap space going into July 13th. And I'd really like to see something get done here between the Penguins and the Oilers. I think there's a good match to be made there. And, you know, at this point in the game, I really like the idea of Puljujarvi playing with Malkin and potentially Rickard Rakell if both are able to come back. You know, because Puljujarvi's ready to play top six. He's capable of playing top six. And, you know, to piggyback off the Danton Heinen point, they need to bring back Danton Heinen as a third line option, I believe. You know, I also like the idea of them potentially taking like a flyer on Dylan Strome as an option, as like a third line option, because I think what they have to do now in order to give themselves their best chances to win and succeed is let Jeff Carter play down on the fourth line and let him be a PK power play specialist. Let him become like the new Matt Cullen, new Brian Boyle type, because they're literally going to sink and not be able to reach their full potential if Jeff Carter is just dead legging it around as the third line center next year.
I think that's what you have to do. Honestly, I think you make Bluger the third line center, you make Carter the fourth, and you keep Heinen with Bluger, and you keep McGinn with Carter. Those are the guys they know. You know, you keep them together. I don't even know if you categorize them as third or fourth lines anymore. You basically just go, this guy plays with Bluger, this guy plays with Carter. I think that's how they should do it. And another name that you know, things that you'd like to see. Again, this is one that I know Florida fans aren't going to like, but Mason Marchment is a name that's been kicked around in free agency. That would be a huge addition to have him as a top 9 forward at Pittsburgh. And obviously Florida's putting a lot of emphasis on trying to sign him, and they should. But I think that guy would be a perfect fit for Pittsburgh. And honestly, I think if you sign him to a Brock McGinn type of contract, that would be reasonable.
I think so too. You know, I think it's like a 3 or 4 year deal in like the 2.7 to 3 range. I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, and honestly, man, like this is just hypothetical and it's probably not ever going to happen because the team loves Jeff Carter way too much. I would not mind the third line next year being Heinen, Evan Rodriguez, and Mason Marchment.
Now, one thing that I do want to point out about Rodriguez is, like, I feel like he's sort of been put on the back burner by not just management but fans as well, because it's like obviously everyone's prioritizing bringing back, you know, Russ, Letang, Gino, and all those other guys, but I feel like Rodriguez has kind of slipped through the cracks in a sense, and I'm not even hearing or seeing any reports on what negotiations are like with him, or are they close to bringing him back, or are they even trying to?
Right.
To me, it seems like Rodriguez is out the door already.
Yeah. That's a good point. And that's somebody that I just don't want them to lose. I mean, he was perfect last year in terms of just being able to play whatever role they need him to play at any given moment. And, you know, he wasn't bad on the PK. Looked good on the power play at times, especially whenever Malkin was out. I feel like I saw something where maybe the Rangers are talking about paying him to be their second line center.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really think that that's that far off. I feel like it's very similar. I feel like Rodriguez is in a very similar spot to like where Ryan Strome was whenever he got to New York. And that would be a good fit for them rather than just going and pursuing a superstar like Mark Scheifele or something like that. You know, but I mean, and then like if they wanted to like just flat out replace Evan Rodriguez, go sign Colin Blackwell or sign Ryan Donato. They're both similar players in terms of like that style and like where they're at, and the potential to pop off is there, in my opinion. It's just a matter of making it work, you know? And I mean, I know that they probably will not do this, but part of me just wants them to get a better third line center, like maybe sign Vince Trocheck to play third line center or something like that, because they'll have the money. It makes sense. Plus, it's better insulation for if an injury were to occur to Malkin or Crosby. He could go up and play in the top 6. And when your full unit is fully healthy, it makes you so much harder to play against, knowing that you're going up against a team that's their inner depth is Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Vince Trocheck, and Teddy Bluger.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Trocheck's been a name that's been kicked around a lot lately. I think it's a dream for most of these guys here in Pittsburgh to have a Pittsburgh kid come back and play for the Penguins. And I don't know if I necessarily mind that, but I don't know if you necessarily have to go out and replace Evan Rodriguez if if you make that deal happen with Puljujärvi, and you keep Raquel as well, I feel like that'll kind of happen on its own. I don't think you need to necessarily go out and find that guy to go out and replace Rodriguez. And like I said earlier, it's maybe you let some of the kids from Wilkes-Barre, like a Pusanen or an O'Connor or a Zadorna, to solidify that bottom six, because I think if you can bring back Raquel, that's half the battle right there.
Yeah, I agree. I think, they have a lot of options, and part of me would be perfectly fine with them trading out two of the defensemen and pursuing Nikita Zadorov to play with Chris Letang. I think that's a good play style for him. It would be a good defense partner for him if Brian Dumoulin were to get moved in the unlikely event that were to occur. Moving forward though into some of the other stuff that happened in the league. Alex DeBrincat getting traded to Ottawa for the 7th overall pick and a second and a third. It's a really good trade for Ottawa, man. I think they are going to be a lot more competitive than one believes. And especially if they're able to land Giroux. Like if they're able to get Giroux to go there, the possibilities are endless, because then your forward core is going to consist of DeBrincat, Giroux, Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, and Drake Batherson. Like they might be a surprise playoff team next year if they're able to find a goalie.
I'd say their rebuild is over. Like you said, that goaltending thing does need to be figured out. But obviously that we've seen the reports that are shopping around Matt Murray, so I feel like that'll figure it out like at some point during the season potentially. So we'll see what happens there. But what is Stan Bowman? Stan Bowman's not a part of the team anymore, is he? Is he still the GM or no?
No, they fired.
I forgot that. Yeah, I forgot. I just used to anytime the Blackhawks stupid move, I still think it's him at the helm. What was the point? I don't get the point in moving these guys out like DeBrincat and Doc. Like obviously Chicago is not going to make the playoffs anytime soon. But I mean, you have to figure Patrick Kane's out the door now. Why would he want to stay with this team anymore? You traded away the one guy he worked well with, he's played well with since Panarin left. That guy's gone now. So he's probably looking at like, what sense is it for me to spend my last however many years here in Chicago? The team's not good. The team doesn't have anyone anymore. It doesn't make any sense for him to stay there. So, it's a great move for Ottawa, obviously. For Chicago, it's just, maybe this is their way of finally saying, okay, we're not a competitive team anymore. It's time to blow it up. That seems to be my take on it.
Yeah. And the thing is like, if they're going to be that non-competitive team, they have to move out Kane and Taves then.
Yeah.
Like they have to fully commit to the bit and not drag them kicking and screaming through however long of a rebuild this is going to be. Because there's a chance that the rebuild lasts until Kane and Taves are ready to retire.
Yeah. They're not going to want to be around for that.
Like, I just want you to know, like, how bad of a situation they're in right now. Sam Lafferty's their 5th highest paid player on their salary cap right now, and he makes $1.15 million.
He can't be making much. Wow. He's their 5th highest. So, obviously, Kane and Taves are 1 and 2. Seth Jones would be 3, right?
I was going by forwards.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
It's Tyler Johnson and Brett Connolly ahead of him.
Oh.
And the whole thing with Taves is like somebody could easily get him at 50% to be a third line center and just be strictly a third line center. And they'll probably be in a pretty solid spot in terms of competitiveness and compete level.
You think Taves? You think Taves would go for that though? You think he's gonna? You figure he's been top. He's been top gun. He's been the top center pretty much his entire career in Chicago. You think he's going to be willing to get trade? Say, all right, I'll take a back seat on this. I'll be a second or third line. I'll be the second or third line center in order to possibly win another cup.
I mean, if you think about it, there was a lot of time over the last year or so where he was the third line center because of Kirby Doc being there. And, it was Kirby Doc and Dylan Strome for the longest time. And I think, the whole thing with Patrick Kane is like, where does he go? Because somebody's going to move the moon and the stars for him. And regardless of the situation, Chicago is probably going to have to retain salary on both Kane and Taves just to stay at the cap floor. Because right now they're at $67.2 million against the salary cap. They need to keep that up as much as they possibly can. Because if you eat 50% on both, their cap expenditure would then be like 57.25 or 57.45. They still have to figure it out. They'd still have to take on a contract or something.
Have a Minnesota situation kind of.
And that's with them already taking on Peter Mrazek from Toronto.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what goes on in Chicago. I mean, if I'm a team like Colorado, I'd be looking at Taves to be a 2 or a 3. And then, I just feel like for whatever reason, at some point, Patrick Kane's going to end up in New York with the Rangers. I just feel like it's a match made in heaven. Other trades, let's see. I saw Luke Cunnin went to San Jose today, which was, although it was a small, little under the radar deal, pretty good deal for San Jose. Allows Mike Greer to get on the board in a sense, and be able to make his first trade. Another big trade that people should be talking about more is the fact that Steve Yzerman was able to get the signing rights to Ville Husso for only a 3rd-round pick, and immediately signed him to a 3-year deal where he's making $4.75 million against the cap. Him and Alex Nedeljkovic, that's the perfect 1A, 1B for them. And it's the perfect situation for Detroit right now, because by the time that 3-year deal is over, Sebastian Cossa is more than likely going to be ready to take over. And, it makes the goalie market a lot more interesting, because now the only goalie on the market going into July 13th is going to be Darcy Kemper. And there's going to be a legit bidding war for Darcy Kemper. Like, he might get like $6 million, which would be a bit more than I would think he's worth on the open market right now. I would say he's about 5. It's going to be him and Jack Campbell. Like, Jack Campbell has to be smiling from ear to ear at this point, because that man is going to get paid like exponentially more than what he should be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, those are really the only 2 names out there that are going to make any type of noise. You think Kemper can only get? You think Kemper's only going to get 6 for this?
He's looking for $6 million at least. He might get more.
I'd say I honestly he could pull off. He could get 8 maybe. Truthfully.
Yeah.
If he gets 8, you got to figure Campbell could get 6 at that point.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 3 and 6 at least for Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. And the Oilers are going to be very active in free agency, I think, for the first time in a while. although there's been some minor hiccups along the way, Ken Holland's done a pretty good job of creating cap space for that team.
Very surprising.
And, you traded Zach Cassian out. You traded Zach Cassian, your first, a third in 2024, and a fifth in a second in 2025 for the 32nd overall pick. You still were able to draft somebody in the first round. Cool, good deal. But getting Zach Cassian off your books was huge because he hasn't been good for a while, and he's just been taking up space in their lineup. And, they might be able to get another significant player outside of signing a goalie. I could see the Oilers low key being a sleeper team for Matt Murray.
I feel like they're gonna try and get one of these two guys in free agency, or maybe get a better. If they're gonna make a trade for a goalie, I don't
It'll
think
be John Gibson.
Exactly, because listen, they know. Okay, we're capable of making a deep playoff run with Connor and Leon. We've proved that now. But we don't want this to be a flash in the pan because obviously, you want to keep those guys happy. You want them to be on your team for as long as possible. And this is like their first sign of hope that, hey, maybe we can actually do something here. You can't afford to throw it away by half-assing it in the offseason and hoping that a goalie's going to fall into your lap. And, if you're going to do this, commit to it. Either you go out and sign a Darcy Kemper or a Jack Campbell, or you make a trade for a John Gibson. You can't take a chance on Matt Murray. No disrespect, but
yeah,
Matt Murray still has to prove himself.
Yeah.
You got to show that he's regained his form. I don't think he's done that yet. He has to do that. And if you're Edmonton, this isn't a time where you're like, okay, let's take a chance on him. You don't have that option anymore. Your main guys are in their primes. You need to make this. You need to find a way to make this work. The only way that's going to happen is if you go out and you get the goalie that you need in free agency and let him run with Stuart Skinner and see what happens from there.
That's a good point. And the Oilers are going to go into July 1st with, let me see. They're going to go into July 1st with like $18 million in cap space. And that's before them inevitably trying to trade off Tyson Barrie. Which I'm shocked didn't happen last night with the rate that defensemen were moving at certain points in the draft. And I think, they need to go get one or two competent top six wingers, in my opinion, so that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can be their third line center. Because the proof's in the pudding. They were playing at their absolute best at certain points throughout the year whenever Nugent-Hopkins was their number three.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to try and bring Evander Kane back once this whole grievance case settles. And I'm trying to think of who they could get. This is a team that I could see offer sheet and they could offer sheet Capo Caco.
Possibly.
I think that would be a good move for them to make, would be if they offer sheeted Caco or, offer sheeted Marty Nietzsche or something like that, because they need to get younger too. They need to stay as young as they possibly can to build around Connor and Leon and make it where they're able to be competitive for long enough and be able to make deep playoff runs so that they stay. Because we were at various points throughout the year, we were wondering whether or not either of these two players would be requesting a trade out or, just flat out wouldn't re-sign at the end of their contract. It's just a lot of stuff going on. I think, I think they're in a good spot. Plus, they still have young players. They have Philip Broberg on defense. They have Dylan Holloway at forward. Xavier Bourgault should be ready to go potentially at the beginning of this year. They still have Raphael Lavoie. Ryan McLeod did pretty good as their third line center last year. Even though that did seem like a very difficult transition for him at times, but he did hold his own. They have a lot of potential here to develop, for the lack of a better term, to develop a wagon for themselves here in Edmonton. And while we're on the topic of the Oilers, this is a perfect place for the Penguins to dump off on their defensemen if they wanted to.
Yeah.
There is no reason, in my opinion, that the Edmonton Oilers should not be interested in Marcus Pettersson.
Yeah, like you said, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to go out and get Pettersson, or they're going to roll the dice with Kulak. And if you do that, you're probably looking somewhere at probably a 4-year deal with maybe a 3.25 average annual value if you do try to sign under that. So if that's what Edmonton sees fit, then by all means go for it, I guess. I've seen reports that Kulak wants to stay. So my guess is if you're Ken Holland, you might as well lock him up because he's clearly wants to be here for obvious reasons. But those are definitely the options to consider. You talked about Kane re-signing in Edmonton. You think that is actually going to happen?
I think they want to have him back, honestly. It's just a matter of what's the price tag going to be.
That's what I'm getting at. I think he gets a team to take the bait on him in free agency potentially.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is, the grievance can get settled later in the summer once Gaudreau and Philip Forsberg have already made their decisions and have signed with wherever they've went. And he's going to be the best player available on the market with not only numbers in the regular season, but just incredible playoff numbers. Somebody's going to definitely take the bait on him. It's just a matter of who's going to be crazy enough. I'm just going to throw this out there. I could see Seattle doing it because they have money to blow.
Yeah, it's possible.
Also, think Seattle's going to go for John Klingberg in free agency pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Because everybody thought they were going to be able to get Simone Nemec or draft David Jiricek. But whenever Shane Wright falls to you, man, you got to take Shane Wright.
You can't pass him up. You can't.
By the way, while we're on that topic,
stare down.
The death glare at the draft table. Good or bad? I love it.
I'm cool with it, but again, we won't know. Just that will determine how iconic that's going to be 4 or 5 years from now. Again, it's like the Alexander Daig comment. He said, whenever he got drafted first overall, he said, "I'm glad I went first because no one remembers number 2. Number 2 was Chris Conner, Hall of Fame defenseman." So again, we won't know. That could go down as an iconic moment, and it could go down as a moment where we just laugh at him. So only time will tell.
Yeah, but in theory, having him and Beniers as your 1-2 for long term, that's good money. Like that.
Yep.
That has Crosby Malkin level ceiling.
Definitely.
And
while we're on the topic of Seattle, obviously they're looking to add. I think they're going to probably bring back most of their young guys. What's his name? Donato. I think Donato should be one that they should explore. Obviously. How do we feel about Phil going there?
I think it would make sense. I was thinking either there or Vegas for him. Actually, no, Phil can't go to Vegas. Phil would probably die in Vegas.
Yeah, you would.
I don't think that would go well for him. No, but I think Seattle would be the perfect team for him because it's a pretty easygoing vibe there. I think they know that they're building something and they're building something good. And he can just go there and kind of just do his thing and be there for the younger players.
And if we're talking about, while we're on the topic of bringing guys in, another former Penguin that I think would be a great fit there would be Patty Hornqvist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Not a bad bottom six option.
No, I think that's what they should do is take on that contract. Now, while we're talking about, since you brought up the Panthers, what do you think is going to happen with Bob? Because once the goalie market fizzles out, he's going to become the best player available. And somebody will probably take that bait.
For sure. And I think the team that should do it is Buffalo.
I was actually thinking that.
You crapped out on that guy, and your starting goalie right now would be Craig Anderson, who's 50. What do you have to lose?
The only issue is, would he waive? You got to keep in mind he has that full net move.
I think it's a sacrifice he'd be willing to make. Because here's the thing. Goalies are beloved in Buffalo. It's always been that way. They've had Dominik Hasek. They've had Ryan Miller, who's about to get his jersey raised to the rafters this year. I feel like they'd really get behind him and if he was brought in. Because you look at the situation, if you're a Sabres fan, if you're Sabres management for that matter, you look at this team saying, okay, are we a playoff team right now? Most likely no. But can we bring in a guy that can help us in the future? Because he's still under contract for quite some time.
Right. And
not to mention, Florida's going to have to retain money on that in order for them to take that on. Mm-hmm. If Florida doesn't even have to retain half. If Florida retains $4 million and you bring Bob in at $6 million per, why not? That seems like a good move to me.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, he's still when he's on his game, he's still one of the best goalies in the league.
Yeah.
But the issue is you're to a point now where with Spencer Knight, where you could give Spencer Knight the reins and let him take charge and be the guy, because the last thing they want to do is mess around with this for too long. And then they're stuck trading out Spencer Knight.
I don't know if Knight's the guy yet.
Okay.
So I think once you move him out, move out Bob, you look on that market again. And there was a guy who was getting shopped around last year, Varlamov.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
And if you get convinced Lou to retain like $2 million, because it's not going to cost you much. If you get them to retain $2 million, you'll probably only cost you maybe a prospect and a second rounder next year.
Yeah, I was going to say Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yeah,
to just run with him as a tandem. I think that can work too.
Mm.
I don't know. It's a very delicate situation though. And the sooner that they figure that out, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, I just think that Bobrovsky's not he's not going to be the long-term solution there for like we thought he was. I think you got to move that contract out and roll the dice with whoever else you got.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else that you want to cover?
I think we've touched them all at this point. Now we're just 5 days away from the free agent frenzy.
Yeah, and as it sits right now, the game plan is to record that night and see how it goes. So, all right, guys, this has been another episode of Forechecking TV. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Forechecking TV and check us out wherever you get your podcast from. All right, guys, thank you and good night.